Hey Becomers, today is tutorial day. This is the day where I answer questions that you have submitted about this week's routine. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about the leg series, the oblique series, and I'm also going to provide a few amplifiers for you today in case you're feeling a little extra strong. So let's go ahead and get started with talking about the leg series. So the number one question that came through about this week's routine was actually not what I thought it was going to be, so I love it when you all surprise me, but the question that came through was about the leg series, and it was actually about the kneeling leg, okay? So this one down here, a lot of you were talking about experiencing some knee pain, so I want to talk about how we can help release that knee. Now, first things first, if you have sensitive knees, you want to make sure that you are on a surface that is properly supporting you. So if you're on like a hardwood floor and you have a thin mat, that would hurt my knee as well. The floor that I'm on right now has a whole layer of gym cushion, then it has our nice cushy mat that we will soon be selling. But another option for you would be to take your mat and double it over so that you have a little extra something to kneel on. Another consideration would be to put some sort of pillow or cushion underneath that knee. As long as it's not too thick, it should adequately support you. That's what you can do for giving yourself a little more cushion, but let's talk about what you can do form-wise to help release that knee and help lift it away from the floor. I have a hint, it has to do with your core. One of my favorite things to think about when doing any kind of exercise is something I would call a micro adjustment. Doing little bitty things with the body to help shift the weight out of where you don't want it to be and get it into where you do want it to be. And that absolutely applies here. And what I'm about to tell you actually is going to help you feel less wrist pain and less knee pain. So this is going to couple for both of those. So let me go ahead and show you. If I were to set up this single leg kneeling position with my hands close, so do you see how right now my wrist is like directly underneath my shoulder? And also my hands are pretty narrow as opposed to having them stepped out wider. Okay, they're in here. If I do that, and I hold a narrow stance with my hands, and then I extend my leg out, and can you see where my weight is right now? Look, this is me lifting, this is me sinking, right? So the moment that I sink and I'm shifted a little bit forward, do you know where I'm feeling this? I'm feeling it in the joints. I'm feeling it in my wrist. I'm actually starting to feel it in my neck. And then I'm definitely feeling it up here in the knee. Okay, so let me show you how you adjust out of this and then I'll talk about it more. Step one, I'm gonna walk my hands a little forward and a little wider. This is so important. That's gonna loosen up the upper body. Step two, I'm gonna pull my ribs and my low belly up and in. Watch here. Makes a big difference. Already the weight is starting to leave those joints. And step three, I'm actually going to shift my weight a little bit backwards, back here some. Oh yeah, there it is, there it is. My hands are way forward. I'm pushing the floor forward and away to help me shift back some and my belly pulls in. Now, let me tell you what this just did for my knee. So before, in the narrow stance, shifted a little forward, all the weight is right like here on the knee, right? Toward where the kneecap is. This is the most sensitive area because let's remember your kneecap is over fluid and it's designed to move, so it's not super stable. When I shift the weight backwards, the weight leaves this section of the knee and it moves down here to the lower knee / shin. This is actually where you want the weight to be held. And some micro adjustments can help you get there. So let me just show you one more time. Narrow stance with the hands, ribs sinking, weight is forward. Adjusting. Hands come forward, they step open a little wider. Ribs lift up and in. Weight shifts back some. There's the shin, there's the lower knee, and this is where I want to take my series. Now, for those of you who asked about the wrist firing up, this is actually going to accomplish that as well. Because the hands are stepped a little wider and a little more forward, we're no longer holding all of our weight in the hands, and instead we're able to move it back and really, really fire up the core, followed by the leg. I do want to provide one more tip for you all that I noticed when I was doing the routine myself. If you're having a hard time keeping the hips stacked and squared, right? So when you lift the other leg, you can't help but sink into this one. My suggestion is to keep your moving leg or your working leg in a smaller range. So basically not lifting it as high. So instead of doing part one with your leg up here and pulling in, why don't you try keeping this leg a little lower to the floor and take it from here. Really makes a difference. It's so much easier to prevent falling into that falling into the standing leg if you keep your working leg a little bit lower. So essentially, don't be afraid to play with a smaller range of motion this week. Before we start talking about the oblique series, I want to give you a little overall breathing tip that always happens in Become. When you're unsure when to breathe, the exhale happens on exertion, okay? So the harder part of the exercise. So for example, if you were doing like a plank, right? Exertion is when you bring the knee in, and then the counter of the exercise is taking the leg out, so that would be the inhale. Another example, you're in a lunge. On the part where you stand up from the lunge, that's the exertion, that would be the exhale. The counter of the exercise is going back down, so that would be the inhale. Another example, if you're doing an oblique twist, right? The exertion is here when we turn to twist. The counter of the exercise is when we would come back forward. So anytime you're unsure, exhale on exertion is usually a really easy way to get you breathing without having to overthink it. For breathing in the obliques, I'm going to give you two different options in which to breathe. Now, I really don't want you to overthink the breath too much because you should breathe when you need air. I know for me, I used to get so tripped up on breath, it would like mess up all of my workout. So let's not go there. But if you find you're holding your breath, let's think about these things. So breathing option number one is in a two breath. Count one is when you scoop, that's exhale. You continue the exhale as you twist. Then you inhale as you reach back forward. This is count three. Ooh, and you continue the inhale as you move into the butterfly to release the hips. So a slow 2-count breath would go. Okay, now those are pretty long breaths, and some of you may feel like you can't necessarily achieve that right now, which is, again, totally fine. So let me show you what it would look like on a 4-count breath in case you want to breathe a little bit more. Go something like this. Count 1, you would inhale to scoop. Count 2, exhale exertion. Count 3, inhale to press forward. Count 4, exhale, fold and release. Showing it again. And that should get you some air in the oblique series. I want to show you another option for the seated oblique series in case being on the floor doesn't really feel great. Especially if you have a bigger belly, that position may not be the most comfortable for you. So if that is the case, you can definitely do this sitting on a chair and it still is really good ab work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tippy toe my feet some just so I don't have quite as much support from the floor. And then it goes something like this. Count 1, I scoop my belly. One more time. Scoop. Count 2, twist. Count 3, push. Count 4, you can still widen your knees and fold over. Again. Showing the other breath. This would be inhale. There it is. Next, I'm going to show you 3 amplifiers that you can inject into this routine in case you're feeling a little extra strong, you have a little extra energy. It's really important to note that if you cannot do these amplifiers that I'm going to show you, they're not required. You're not weak if you can't do them. I love to think of this as bodies being on a spectrum, right? As much as we want to take care of ailments and things that are going on and provide alternatives, we also want to be able to provide amplifiers for those who are feeling like they want to push. So this next part is not intended to be discouraging. These are just some things that you have the option to play with this week, starting with the oblique series. For the oblique series, instead of doing it with bent knees, you can do this one with straight legs just to add a little more amp. So it would look something like this. Scoop, twist, reach, butterfly. Scoop, twist, reach, butterfly. Amplifier option number 2 could be in the plank series that we do. And we're doing the plank, switch. So essentially in that full plank, you could release a foot and go for single leg, either with the toe hovering off the ground or with the knee bent like this. My only request is that you still throw in some other type of plank that feels easy for you. And notice I'm putting easy in air quotes because there is no such thing as an easy move. The goal of this plank series is to have a range of 3 different levels, 3 to 4, and then make each one of those feel challenging. So if you want a harder plank than this one, go for a single leg. Amplifier number 3 is no joke, but I'm gonna give it to you anyway in case you all are there. It's definitely tough, but it's pretty cool. So in the leg series, when we do this, I call it a licking leg. When we do that, you basically do 2 rounds. You could do 1 kneeling, and then you could do 1 hovering. Let me show you what it looks like. Okay. My first round, I'm going to take staying on the ground, kneeling, so my leg comes in and in. Now I scoop, moving from the hip, bring it forward, taking it back up, leg stays engaged, and then extending out. Round 2, I could hover in and in. You just have to really push the floor away and use the low belly to stay lifted. Right here, my leg goes out and down. Now I go elbow, elbow, kick, opposite leg, right back down, up to the hands, then start again.